Well, guys, it looks like the EA Saudi Arabian buyout is causing even more nerves to spike, and people are panicking that it might be over for activism at Electronic Arts once and for all. This is all because EA has gotten, as that one guy in GTA 4 said, Arab money, if you will, and yep, they definitely have. To catch you up real fast, EA has been bought by 3 private groups, the biggest being the PIF, which is spearheaded by the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. They're using their billions of dollars to buy out one of the biggest game publishers in the world, and now stuff like Battlefield, FC Sports, and more are now all owned by the Saudi Arabian government pretty much, and their smaller investors who help them do it. So how has the industry responded to all of this? Not well, let me tell you. In fact, they're pretty angry that this deal went through at all, and the big issue at the heart of this is, are women and LGBT workers safe now that EA is getting Arab money? Let's dive into this. Firstly, from GameFile, we got this one titled, "One of the world's biggest video game companies plans to sell to some of the world's most powerful people." Yep, I bet Stephen Totilo, who wrote this article, was probably seething the entire time, because Stephen, by the way, in case you don't know, used to run Kotaku and is a big-time activist himself. So I just know this guy is really mad having to report that all the stuff that he advocates for is basically now gonna be destroyed by people that he clearly doesn't agree with. Anyway, there's a lot of info to go over here. Firstly, it's confirmed that this deal will now be finalized by at least April to July 2026. So EA is going to be fully controlled very soon, is what's happening, by people who have no interest in anything that doesn't make them any money. Then Andrew Wilson, the CEO of EA, will also stay in his role. Here's what he had to say, as it reads here. "Our new partners bring deep experience across sports, gaming, and entertainment," Wilson wrote. "They are committed with conviction to EA. They believe in our people, maybe, our leadership, and the long-time vision we are now building together." I don't know about believing in certain groups of people, specifically of the rainbow variety, but the Saudi Arabians will, believe in anyone making the money at least. This same PIF group, which stands for Public Investment Fund, that supports and supplies the Saudi Arabian government, also owns many other parts of games already. In case you don't know, the PIF already owned 10% of EA before they bought this. They also spent about $5 billion buying out another company called Scopely, which makes mobile games like Monopoly Go and so on. They also own most of Niantic, which makes Pokemon Go. They also own 6.5% of Take-Two, that's the owners of Grand Theft Auto and then some. They also own 4.2% of Nintendo, which I didn't even know about that. And they also own 6.6% of Capcom, which is also owned by this same Saudi group. So yeah, these guys, they own a lot in games already, and with EA now, it's a huge splash. But here's what Stephen Totilo, again, who's an activist and advocates for all the usual DEI stuff, said in his own personal opinion about the Saudis, as it reads here. "Some people in the press, at the game companies, and in player communities have nevertheless flinched at the kingdom's investments in gaming, given Saudi Arabia's human rights record. Critics see the government-funded gaming play in a similar light to the kingdom's investment into golf and boxing," Human Rights Watch states. "PIF investments in high-profile sports and entertainment events domestically and internationally are used to whitewash the country's abysmal human rights record." Interesting that you feel that way, Stephen, since your side tends to also push for more immigration into countries or, other things like that. Considering places like those are not really friendly at all also to the LGBT people either that are coming in, but to plant your flag in the sand here and say that this is where you're now going to draw the line, that is telling. It tells me that journalists in games, much like companies usually, they have no moral compass themselves. They simply just agree with whatever is politically correct, even if the things they agree with don't even align with their values, when it comes to other things that they also claim to champion. And if you enjoy the content, consider the usual YouTube stuff from liking the video, commenting, and more. Thank you, but I think what a lot of Western journalists, and really just people in general, need to understand is simply this, that the rest of the world, especially in the Middle East and then some, they do not view the world in a similar way to, say, those that live in America or Canada or anywhere else really. So trying to push back against how the rest of the world operates or views each other through your leftist, activist, ideologue viewpoint is kind of pointless, because they're now realizing how weak they really are. As Stephen reports here, as you can also see, he's appalled that the Saudi episodes of an Amazon Prime documentary about the Esports World Cup also omitted LGBT voices in the episode of that same documentary in the Saudi version. Yeah, but again, you guys did this to yourselves. You weakened the fabric of these companies by just piling it with activists, not really realizing that most of these people want to be activists first and maybe game developers third, maybe even fourth down that list. The profits will fall. Sure, some parts of EA still do well, like the FC Sports division, which is the part of EA that rebranded after the FIFA license ended, and FC Sports 2026 is easily going to be EA's biggest game of the year and makes them millions of dollars like crazy. I mean, the sports division of EA is what makes them real money. Like these games, man, like the FIFA series alone sold 325 million copies. FC Sports 2025 alone sold 20 million, which is absolutely insane. They're pulling Elden Ring numbers with a yearly soccer title. But when you go outside of the real money makers to the smaller studios, that's where things get a lot more dicey. BioWare is definitely sweating bullets right now because they are operating at a massive loss currently due to Veilguard, Anthem, and then some. Because despite EA making Arab money over fists from their sports titles, technically the Battlefield series has also been limping for like almost 10 years, with terrible games that haven't performed well and have been filled with activist drivel, not to mention really bad performance as well. Sure, okay, Battlefield 6 is around the corner, which looks to hopefully fix those issues and drop the activism parts, but when it came to 2042 and Battlefield 5, which were still full of the usual activist slop, which no doubt hurted EA's bottom line, and that also made their armor against the salivating lips of people with very deep pockets that were clearly ready to take over, which they now have. Because in case you don't know, a part of this $55 billion deal, EA will also take on $20 billion in debt because, like I said, they weren't making enough. As that Park Place shows here, as you can all see, BioWare may be on the chopping block because of this debt too. Mass Effect 4, or I guess 5 if you count Andromeda, has been in development hell for like 8 years or something already. BioWare's first game in years was Veilguard, which didn't do well, as we all know. It actually did so poorly that it came to PS Plus and Game Pass not even a year after release, which is the telltale sign that your game flopped really hard. So the problem is that even with a $55 billion buyout, it still wasn't enough to save EA from their debt, which tells you that that activism slant that they took for almost a decade thanks to DEI and then some has quite literally not been paying off for them. And pandering to the usual LGBT sentiments and trying to rebrand all their franchises from mostly being for male players to being for girls or whatever else has been, let's be real, disastrous. And when it comes to having $20 billion in debt, the next logical stance is for EA's new owners to look at what they have going on and say, okay, do we really need this studio or these people or this game that's in development? And they'll look at the track record. And with BioWare, there's no way the Saudis won't see the terrible performance of Anthem and Veilguard and go, why are we funding this? Look, I love Mass Effect, but it's clear that the old BioWare is not really there anymore anyways. I'm not saying that I want them gone, but if Mass Effect 4 or 5, however you want to quantify it, is going to be another Veilguard, the Saudis are just going to pull the life support and then throw the corpse in the incinerator before it even ships. Because Veilguard was BioWare's current age philosophy. Originally a live service title that got turned into a single-player game, it still had the skeletal structure of a game meant to be some weird co-op experience that was meant for online play. The world's hub cities felt more like Destiny 2 tower zones. The characters stood around looking doe-eyed. And the menu systems within Veilguard are basically the usual live service slop designs with the currencies and whatnot. But the game bombed. It didn't help EA erase that debt, it only made it worse. I mean, staff got laid off like Patrick Weeks, who I showed in my previous video about this buyout, complaining that his politics would be removed from EA, which I mean, thank God for that. But the thing is that we're entering a new era where this sort of thing, this wokeness, if you will, for lack of a better term, it can no longer stand. I know that it's still there. I know studios and whatnot are still pushing for this kind of stuff in their stories. I mean, Ghost of Yote is right around the corner, I know. But it's become very clear that most people are sick of it and are moving past it already. No one really wants this sort of thing anymore. They want normal games, or I guess based if you want to call them that. They want Battlefield 6, obviously, but they want it with none of that stuff. You know, none of the zero rainbow armor nonsense. They would want a Dragon Age game with male and female, not the body type options where the LGBT stuff is not thrown in your face. Mass Effect, for example, that's always had LGBT themes in it since its inception, but BioWare back then was a lot smarter than they were now. They didn't throw it in your face, it was there only if you wanted to see it, because that was the whole point. It was all about player choice. But you flash forward to now with Veilguard as their blueprint, and the LGBT stuff was no longer your choice. It had to be in your face all the time now. And it didn't work. Every person in power in Veilguard is either gay, trans, or something in between. And every villain, I'm not kidding, is either a white man or a white woman, and that's it. Even the corrupted elven gods that are shown in that game also have humanoid forms in Veilguard. And what were they before they corrupted? Of course they were white men and women, because of course it is. Look, the agenda was obvious, so frankly, I don't feel much if these sorts of things are being ripped out of these games because it wasn't working. Now, if Veilguard had sold 20 million copies like FC Sports did, we would be having a very different conversation. And likely, the Saudi Arabians would definitely let more games like that be made if they were making money, and that's the point, but it didn't because Veilguard didn't even sell 10% of what the FC games did. So, here we are now. I mean, you have the Sims community page that had an interesting article as seen here. It's titled, EA Employees Voice Concerns Over the EA Buyout. So, some anonymous EA employees voiced their concerns, as one says here, one stating that they're afraid of layoffs that might occur with this buyout, with the other stating that this feels like a big FU to all women and LGBTQ+ employees currently working at Electronic Arts. Like, how am I supposed to feel sorry for these people knowing what they have put the players through by destroying their franchises though? Like, I would have some sympathy, but these are the kinds of people who routinely would say on social media that their games are not meant for people like me or others. Like, remember all the devs that were celebrating when Charlie Kirk passed away and how we saw the mask fall off of so many at so many Western studios? All celebrating because a guy they didn't agree with got taken out. I mean, those same people, if you ask them to remove elements that you don't like, they would simply tell you that they're not making games for you anymore. I mean, we are seeing that right now with Ghost of Yotei is a great example. The lead actor there, Erika Ishii, has me blocked on Twitter before I even knew that she existed. We know these types of people hate anyone who disagrees with them on genuinely anything these days. And by the way, that same Erika Ishii who plays the main character in Ghost of Yotei, yeah, she was one of the female voice options in Dragon Age Veilguard for Rook, because of course she was. And we know that BioWare before they got purged by EA for delivering an absolutely slop product was only hiring activists and people who believed what they also believed. So how can we feel sorry for these people knowing that if they had the power, which they did for a bit there, all they would do with that power is simply abuse it and make stuff for just their small groups and then hijack franchises just to ruin them. Dragon Age used to be a dark fantasy epic adventure with tons of player choice, and then they turned it into a Dragon Age, drag queen show, I guess, and a humiliation ritual with Veilguard. Like, did you know that Veilguard came to PS Plus not even 6 months after its release, like I already said, but it also bombed on PS Plus, as seen here from that Park Place. As they put it here, despite being handed out at no cost to millions of subscribers, the Veilguard couldn't even crack the top 10 most played PlayStation games in March. According to True Trophies, which tracks over 3.4 million active PlayStation Network accounts, the game barely reached 15th place in player engagement. When your game is literally on a service at no extra cost, and even then it can't be bothered to be played by millions of players who have access to it, what are we doing? I wouldn't be surprised if the Saudis, can BioWare. I mean, even the BioWare merch store that limps on and makes money not on their new characters, but just the classic ones. Just go on the BioWare merch store right now and see how much of their sold out merch is specifically about Garrus Vakarian or Tali from the Mass Effect trilogy. Games that are almost 20 years old at this point, and the new stuff, nobody really cares, and that should tell you everything. So these EA employees who are anonymous being angry that the Saudis will axe jobs specifically targeting women or LGBT, I mean, what do you want them to do? Look, I'm not saying it's right technically to just target them, but let's be real, guys. If you're looking at the spreadsheets, and I mean that like objectively, and you see that the places in your company that you just bought for billions, where it's overwhelmingly staffed by women or whatnot, and the profits are all down there, like, what are you supposed to do? Sure, if this was EA before, like in 2020, they would probably not fire the female employees and then some, because the games journalists out there would claim that they're sexist or something. Remember what I said earlier, that people are finding out quick that the rest of the world outside of America or Canada Canada doesn't view the world the same way they do? That's the Saudis. They aren't going to look at EA's staff and care who is what or whatever they identify as. They're just going to look at the numbers and go, okay, who is making us money and who isn't making us money? And if the people not making the money happen to be mostly women, well, they'll just fire them now too. Because the Saudi people clearly don't care about the same values as your gender study professor does. The gender professor will try to tell you there's a billion genders. The Saudis, they'll just laugh and then fire that professor and tell them to empty their desk by 4 p.m. because they don't care what they think. And this is what I kept trying to say for literally years on this channel. Look at how much gaming has already changed. How the implosion of Chinese-made content alone has already begun to shape the very fabric of modern gaming, okay? After Black Myth Wukong came out, we saw a huge push by China and Korea and more to make as much money as possible in gaming by giving player games with sexy women and then some. Stellar Blade, Wu Chang, it keeps on going. You have Tides of Annihilation, that's coming as well. But anyway, they are all catering to an audience that the Western devs are clearly ignoring. And by doing so, the Chinese studios are now making money over fists, or I should just say Asian studios in general, not just China. But anyways, like, let's go look at Marvel Rivals right now. Holy cow, that's making a lot of money, isn't it? Gee, I wonder why. Oh, that's right, because the women are really attractive, the outfits are Gunnar approved. If BioWare was in control of Marvel Rivals, they'd make everyone look like Concord characters. The tides are shifting is what I'm saying, okay? The industry tried the activist route, it didn't work. They had about maybe 4, maybe 5 years tops to turn the industry into their own little special hellhole paradise where everything bended to their whim, and all they managed to do was ruin everything and destroy every single franchise that they touched. As Insider Gaming shows here as it's titled, BioWare staff worried about studio's future. So Insider Gaming also spoke to some BioWare devs, anonymously of course, but here's what one of them said. Look at the negativity that came after Dragon Age, said one source. If we felt it was only going to get worse then, you can imagine what some of us think now. Again, you guys did this though. Like, you need to instill confidence that what happened with Veilguard would never happen again in the future. But if that doesn't happen, what do you expect? But here's what another dev said. I've been doing it since last year, but I'm making sure I have a portfolio ready and feelers out for other jobs. Another current employee said, kind of feels like a matter of time. All you guys had to do is make games like you did in the early 2010s. Take a page out of Larian's book and make the LGBT stuff optional if players want to see it or not. You guys won Game of the Year with Dragon Age Inquisition, and you did just that, by the way. You know, the same thing that Larian did with Baldur's Gate 3, but now look at you guys. 11 years later, and the studio is now on the brink of utter collapse now because of these activists. But this part just makes me livid. Just let me read it for you. Insider Gaming understands that at one point, there were talks of EA looking to sell off the studio. Where those ended up, however, is unknown. Regarding where things stand with Mass Effect, they are working under the assumption that the game is going to come out. At the beginning of the year, only a small team was actively working on it, but more resources had recently started to be put into the game. What do you mean, only a small team? The game has been in pre-production for years at this point, guys. You're telling me that a small team is only working on Mass Effect now. What the hell else do they have going on there that's more important? What are they doing at BioWare? It should be all hands on deck making that game specifically as amazing as it can possibly be, because their future literally depends on it. A small team, guys. You gotta be kidding me here, dude. Like, am I crazy here or what? How does this happen? They announced the next Mass Effect, just so you guys know, as seen here on screen, 4 years ago already. 4 whole years. And now only in 2025, they have a small team working on it now at BioWare. Like, what do you want me to say? This is going to make me angry. They made Mass Effect 1 in 3 to 4 years. Mass Effect 2 was done in 2 years, and Mass Effect 3 in about the same. We are like 5, maybe even 6 years of pre-production alone on Mass Effect's next game, and they're only now having a small team working on it? Like, this is unreal. Dude, like, come on. If BioWare does get shut down to remove that debt, I really wouldn't be surprised, but this is honestly baffling to me. Another dev would also tell Insider Gaming, we're going to keep working until they tell us we're done. Insider Gaming was told, it's not the healthiest way to live, but as long as the paychecks keep coming, we're not going to just walk away. Like, good lord, dude, I'm baffled by what I'm reading here. Old BioWare, like OG, would have been on the second game already in this same time frame. This can't be the same BioWare that made the original trilogy what it was. Like, this is beyond baffling to me. But honestly, what this has all shown me is that the hypocrisy of these sorts of activist types in games, like the same who won't criticize, say, the African governments and they're clearly anti-LGBT laws, but they have no problem criticizing the Saudi Arabian laws simply because the Saudis are richer, I guess. Like, it's very clear that this logic is not being applied in a similar manner across the board by these types. The same people saying that EA is now owned by the worst people are the same types who will stand up and try to defend other places that are literally doing the same sort of human rights violation stuff as well. It just shows that these people have zero morals and they're NPCs. Maybe they're just stupid or all of the above. I don't know. I guess because Saudi Arabia is rich and has, I don't know, business with America more, that it's seen as an oppressor to these types. But the fact that they won't criticize others that are like them, like, it's just ridiculous, dude. The criticism of activism, like, oh my God, can easily be spun to portray anything they don't like is either fascist or xenophobic, which is very, good for them, I guess. But it's clearly never applied equally anyways. And generally speaking, what's happening here is that a bunch of people who likely had no business making what they made are now reaping what they sowed now. All the groups that feel like they're being targeted by this buyout are now voicing their concerns because they know that deep down their belief systems and their politics are about to be hit with a heavy dose of harsh reality. Like, all that virtue signaling, the clubs they made in these studios to cultivate the activism, all of it is going to be uprooted and destroyed because they refuse to make games for the players first, but instead just use these franchises as bludgeoning tools for their agenda. I'm telling you guys, before long, Saudi Arabia and China, they'll just own the entire industry, just full stop, dude. And it's because of the brain rot mind virus that these Western devs have become accustomed to that's allowing this to happen. Like, imagine they're a castle. Okay, these Western devs, basically, they slashed the chains that are holding their giant wooden door, so it is now slammed down. And now the enemy's just walking in casually and just taking over the place, and they're doing nothing about it. And they only slashed those chains for the door because the people who told them maybe it's a good idea to keep that door up so the enemies can't walk in, no, they got triggered and decided to reject them and own the chuds. And now look at you guys. All your belief systems and the work that you have gone to do, it's all undone because you just had to be stupid. Small team working on Mass Effect. I'm so mad about that, man. What the hell is going on anymore? Look, at the end of the day, layoffs will be coming. And let this be a stark reminder to those that are still trying to push this agenda, you're not bulletproof from failure either. And if you keep this up, you're going to be owned by people who also think that your beliefs are sacrilegious, and you will also be forced to never voice them ever again in professional settings. And you are burning your own freedom because you wanted to own the chuds. Well, congratulations, I guess. Now your belief systems will never be allowed to speak again at these companies. I really hope it was worth it to you because you all did this to yourselves. But what do you think? Let me know in the comments. As always, thank you for watching. Subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Small team on Mass Effect. You gotta be kidding me, dude.